In the beginning, God created the first humans. The first humans said, cool world you made for us, but we'd rather go our own way. The consequence of that is people start killing each other and doing their own thing because he didn't like it. Then humanity got so bad, that God said, I'm going to wipe out everybody except for one family, and I'm going to start over with this family called Noah's family. A few years later, God picked another family, another guy named not Abel, Abram. His name got changed to Abraham. Who is he married to? Sarah, right? Sarah got changed to Sarah. And God made a promise. God made a promise with Abraham. What was the promise? Elise. Or sand on the seashore. Good job. And what else did he promise? What was Abraham's job? Abby. To show the world what God was like. Last week we learned there was actually another promise God gave to Abraham, which is why we had a story about a tabernacle, or God's what? What was his promise with his people? Not his covenant is a promise, Grady.
They would obey him.
Not that they would obey him, but what was God's promise to Abraham?
That God would always be with them.
God would always be with them, right. Because that would be boring and not helpful if all of a sudden God just said, all right, good luck showing everybody what I'm like on your own, right? How are they doing without God? Horrible. So they need God's help, don't they? All right. And then the promise, covenant got passed down to who? Then it got passed down to? Nope, not Esau. That's just the story. It got passed down to who? Jacob, right. And then Jacob had how many sons? It's a dozen. 12, like donuts. And then one of those sons, his name was Joseph.
13 with donuts because a baker's dozen has 13.
That's right. And he did have 13 kids because his 13th child was a girl, Dinah. So one of the sons, his favorite, was Joseph. And what happens when a dad or a parent plays favorites with the kids? What do the other kids think? Oh, that's awesome. I love that you like that other kid instead of me. What do you think, Molly? How did they all treat Joseph? Ugh. Yeah, good. Say that out loud. Say it loud. Ugh. Everybody go, ugh. Ugh. Right. So they all conspired to throw Joseph in a pit, sell him as a slave. God was what? God was with Joseph. Eventually, he became second in charge of a superpower called Egypt. And the reason why is because he could interpret dreams, and he interpreted the king of Egypt, which is a Pharaoh. And Joseph was in charge of stockpiling all this food because the dream said there'll be 7 years of lots of food, but then there'll be 7 years of no food. And so the king hired Joseph to manage all the food. And so when there was a famine, guess who shows up to come get food? Jacob's sons, or Joseph's brothers. And how does that go for them? Does Joseph say, oh, you mess with me, I'm going to mess with you. I'm the most powerful person in the world, and I'm going to kill you. Is that what he says? Oh, no, he doesn't. He says, you meant something for evil, but God meant something for good. God was working out some good stuff here, so you could be saved. So Joseph doesn't kill his brothers, which is good. But Joseph's family, Jacob, came to live in Egypt because there was a famine. So, 400 years later, there's not only 70 covenant people, God's people. Now there's like 2 or 5 million people. Like there's a lot. So it went from a small family to a nation of people. And the Egyptians were like, they're going to kill us if they join our enemies. We need to make Exodus great again, make Egypt great again. And so they made them slaves. And they said, we're going to send all the babies and throw them in the river. This one mom saved her son Moses, and Moses became the leader eventually and led the people of God out of what country? Egypt, right, Egypt. And through the 10 plagues and then the Passover where God rescued his people that night, he brought them to a mountain and he gave them, everybody look over here, he gave them the 613 commands. The first 10 are The 10 Commandments, right. And then last week, we talked about how you can be in God's presence and not die. Right? And who did we say was our answer to that? Jesus, right.